Hello and welcome to another very special episode of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast. Today, we're joined by Max Stirling, who is a sales operations manager at Adarma. Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here, Tom.
So let's kick off and understand your journey, which I believe started in sales and marketing in the practitioner area and then shifted into operations. So how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so it actually goes slightly further back than that. So obviously my career hasn't been hugely long. I'm still quite young. I started off in business actually in sort of manufacturing department of an electronics firm. So I would sit and work on printed circuit boards and adjust lenses. And it was there that I got this sort of addiction to continuous improvement. You know, if they got me to sit down and do a task, I'd always try and look at ways to make it more efficient, make it faster, reduce wastage. So I really got that into my mind at an early age. And then when I moved into sales and marketing, I was obviously working on processes within those teams. And again, that drive for continuous improvement meant that I was sort of naturally drawn to sales operations. I wanted to improve processes. I want to empower people with data. So when I was offered a project to deploy Salesforce to the organization and kind of be rid of manual spreadsheets, I really leapt at the opportunity, and it was there that I cemented my desire to be in sales operations.
Where do you think the drive for continuous improvement comes from?
Tricky one. I think it was probably being frustrated at the status quo. So if I can see something that's not working quite right or that can be optimized, it actually frustrates me in the very back of my mind. So that's probably the biggest driver.
Makes total sense. You've just given us two phrases almost at the start of the episode, which I think could even be the title of the episode. So two little gems early on. So the first is this passion for continuous improvement. And then the second is empowering reps with data. Awesome start, Max. So now could you just bring us up to speed with the current sales or revenue operation at Adarma, e.g. how many reps are you working with and how many people in the ops team?
Yeah, so at the moment, so I'm sales operations manager at Adarma, and within the sales team, we have 4 salespeople. We've got 4 client directors, and I've got another sort of analyst working with myself in sales operations. So it's quite a small team, but we get a lot of work done for what we are.
What is the key to getting a lot of work done as a sales ops function?
For me, it's driving simplicity. So making sure that everyone within that team has a clear view on what we're doing and we're all working off the same sheet. So whether that's processes in Salesforce or rolling up to the same reports that we all produce as a team or focusing on those key deals that are really important for the business, it's just making sure that we're all aligned towards the same goal.
And do you do that with like a weekly or daily meeting?
Yeah, so we use a weekly meeting that goes across departments. So it's really important in our line of work to involve the services side of the business. So we need to be talking daily with the service delivery teams, with resourcing teams, also finance on occasion. So you can't work in a siloed fashion when you're delivering services to customers, because they expect things to be done by certain times. They expect them to be done to a certain quality. And it's not as if you're shipping a product out the door. And that's where the collaboration is really important. So those weekly meetings are crucial, actually, between the sales team and the other teams.
What would you say was the most impactful thing the sales ops function did in 2020?
So in 2020, we restructured the way we reported on our sort of data as an organization. So we went from having a sort of a legacy model that came from the previous company that we left and then became a sole entity as Adarma. And we actually looked at our processes and what we currently report and said, okay, what do we want our new data model to be? You know, whether it was by line of business, whether it was by product type. And then we reshifted all of the data in the organization towards that new model. And it made everything so much more simple. Reports worked out of the box. It was more intuitive for the salespeople to enter deals. So that was really a key change for us in 2020.
And then moving into 2021, do you have a list of priorities that you're going to tackle?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, it's about taking that sort of reporting level that you've got at the moment and diving into a deeper level of analysis that can help people, whether it's at a senior level, a middle management level, or even sort of base users, make better decisions. So it's going into business intelligence, that added layer of reporting, whether it's with additional tools or expanding the data model that you have at the moment to make sure that we can drive that.
So Alex, I think you have a bit of experience here, right? Pulling out information to show internal stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's put it as a question. So you mentioned obviously 3 levels. So yeah, end users, middle management, and sort of senior stakeholders. Do you have you're going to go top down, bottom up? Have you thought about a plan for how to satisfy reporting requirements like that?
So it's early days at the moment. In keeping with the company values, we believe in empowering everyone. So if someone at the senior level can see the data, someone at the end user level, unless it's particularly confidential, should be able to see that too. And that way, then everyone's on the same page, as I mentioned earlier. So I don't think we've really taken an approach to it yet, but I'm definitely keen to make it as transparent as possible.
Sounds great. I think indeed the democratizing of insight can make a massive difference, and it's really empowering to teams as well. Not that the sort of all the core information is shared across the business. I just found, and maybe again it'll be different in your situation, but often that obviously different stakeholders will have a slightly different slant that they want on the data, and I tend to find that the higher you go, the more it helps to start. I think top down tends to help because again you get things so that someone's boss is looking at something and the people below want to kind of know what their boss is looking at. And that kind of approach works without saying, I don't care about the users. I'm all about the people with the shiny titles. And so that might be something worth thinking about. But that's cool. I did also have another question just on some of the pieces you're saying. It didn't make sense just to jump in any point, but you mentioned simplicity a couple of times. Tom flagged it at the beginning. And I wondered, it's a great concept, something that I think a lot of us would want to be doing in our process. But do you have any top tips around how you manage to keep things simple, particularly given, again, you mentioned about data and there's just so many potential data points that we can have. So have you got any top tips on simplicity?
Yeah, definitely. So a top tip from me is to keep things objective rather than subjective. So if you imagine if someone's got criteria for how they might assess a lead or assess a deal, and they say, well, I kind of take a gut feel on it. I tend to know these things. Ask them to actually write down what those criteria are. Is it the size of the company they're looking at? Is it the length of the call they had with the prospect? If they can actually write down what those criteria are, it can be shared within the team. And then that can drive the process to say, what actually helps us win deals, what helps us secure prospects. And not only that criteria can then be used to implement within the CRM. So you can go into the land of automation and then you're saving people's time too and making it more efficient. So that's how you build the engine, using simplicity, sort of delving right into the criteria that people are using, perhaps subconsciously and within their mind, but getting it written down.
I want to talk about your ambition within the organization or within the world of sales ops. You have this passion for making processes simple and improving them. Where do you think that takes you within an organization? Would that be leading a sales ops function somewhere, whether it be Adarma or elsewhere? Or would you think that will take you elsewhere inside a business?
I think, to be honest, it will keep me within sales operations. I was naturally drawn to it in the first place. And the reason why I'd probably stay in there is because sales ops has got such a unique place in the organization where it's fixing processes at the base level, also reporting at the end level, sort of the outcome stuff. And then it's also doing all the analysis that's driving the company towards its goals. So you're working with so many other teams, and also at quite a senior level at points where in other roles you wouldn't usually have that span of variety within the work. So for me, I'm almost doing a different job every single day, and I love it. So some days I might spend sort of a week just delving into analysis, reports, and then another week I might be switched on to process, and it's things that we want to fix as a business. And that's what really keeps the role interesting for me.
Okay, let's talk about forecasting. Do we have any tips? I assume potentially the forecast would have been messed around a little bit in 2020 or even in 2021. First, if you could just explain your forecasting process and then explain how we're kind of trying to get over this in 2021.
Yeah, so forecasting is that nut that everyone wants to crack, isn't it? It's probably top of the agenda for a lot of sales ops teams. And for us, forecasting is initially driven by sales. So obviously they're the ones at the coalface. They're the ones speaking to the client. So we take the initial information that we get from sales, and then that's ingested into sort of a tool that automatically profiles what that revenue could look like. And as a services business, that's really important because our revenue isn't just a snapshot. It sort of flows out depending on how the work is done. So that tool is really important for us in showing how that initial sale translates to a revenue curve throughout the year.
Can you share the name of that tool? Or did you build it in-house?
So it's not an in-house tool. It's called Kimball, and it's a piece of professional services automation.
Amazing. All makes total sense. So we're taking the insights or the feeling from the reps and then feeding that into this tool, which is going to help you forecast forward. Clearly some reps may have biases in the way they report data, and I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. How do you manage that when you're trying to accurately forecast? Do you have a profile for each different rep because you know that one rep may be more optimistic than another?
Yeah, that's always going to be the case when you're working with individuals, isn't it? You have some people in sales, which is quite natural to be quite positive about deals. You know, they always go in there for a hopeful attitude and they want to attack it. And then you have others who are more realistic. In order to balance it out, it really takes a management overview. You need someone with kind of an objective viewpoint, and then being able to look at all of those deals and then gauge, okay, is that one potentially being over forecasted, this one being under forecasted? When actually delving into the details, you can use a methodology like MEDDIC in order to qualify the deals and say, is this probability or stage that you're forecasting actually reflective of the evidence that you've received? So that's you can kind of look at it an evidence-based approach using a sales methodology like MEDDIC.
Could you break that down for the audience?
So MEDDIC is a sales methodology. It's an acronym that stands for metrics, economic buyer, decision criteria, decision process, identify pain, and champion. Now, what all of those are is they're just qualifiers. So it's about asking the right questions with the prospects in order to qualify, is this a deal for us as a company? Can we deliver the services that the client needs? Because that's the most important thing. If we can meet their needs, we'll likely get the sale too. The second one is it a deal that's worth my time? Are they just asking questions and trying to get some knowledge from us, or are they genuinely interested and have a pain point that needs to be fixed? And what MEDDIC does, it breaks it down into the pain the customer is experiencing, so why they want your services, or rather why they need your services, and then also how to get to the point of helping them. So the decision criteria, decision process, and which people you've got to liaise with. So who are your key contacts? So your champion is that person who's really going to be helped by your services within the client organization. And then your economic buyer refers to the approval process and who's got to sign it off.
An encyclopedic knowledge of sales. Because I put you on the spot there, Max, didn't I? And I wasn't sure if you were going to pull through, but you pulled through with the acronym, but also the meaning behind the words. I'm very impressed in that. But it does make total sense, having a reliable methodology or a standard way of assessing a deal, regardless of the emotions of the salesperson.
Cheers, Tom. Thanks for the feedback.
Final question before we go on to the most important question, which is about relationships with sales reps. Do you have any strategies or tips for building a relationship with a rep that will enable you to influence or change their behavior?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first protocol is that they've got to trust you. So you've got to work with them rather than against them. So you don't want to be someone who's breathing down their neck saying, why is your data always a mess? And how are you doing against targets and all this sort of stuff? Because then they'll actively avoid you. You won't be someone they want to associate with. So first and foremost, you want to help them. What data do they need in order to drive their sales? Give them that. What tools do they need to drive their sales? Make sure they have that with them too. And if they're worried about something or they want to know how they're performing against their target, you can show them. And you can also be that person who's the sort of sole helper within the organization for sales. So you're the one who can sort their problems internally. You can go to resourcing, make sure that something gets sorted for them. You can liaise with finance to get an invoice resolved. You can be their problem solver, their champion internally. So that's the main thing that I found when building a relationship, is to be a helper and not a hindrance, and definitely not someone to judge their performance.
Totally makes sense. It's almost like you're the fixer. You're going to solve their problems, and you're not going to be the person who's coming annoying them to do stuff and judging them. So that all makes total sense. Final question then, Max. Who in the world of sales ops would you most like to take for lunch?
So that's a tricky one. I'm not sure if there's anyone within sales ops who I'd actually go after. I think it would probably be me, a famous business person. I'd really like to sit down with the likes of Mars and Sorrell and just see how on earth did they spin up a business of that size. And actually, increasingly, it'd probably be someone like Ben Francis at Gymshark, someone my age who's got a billion pound business, and just say, how did you do it? Grow so quickly and yet so sustainably at the same time. Because to me, that is incredible. And it's a trick of the trade I'd love to know.
Makes sense. A broader answer. Max, this was an incredible interview. I'm very confident that you're going to have an amazing future in sales ops because you're relatively early in your career compared to other guests we've had on, but the wisdom that you've shared already, it has been pretty amazing. It's still those two points from the start that I think we can highlight, which is this focus on continuous improvement and then the empowerment of reps with data. But then I also did really enjoy your approach or ethos to working with reps as well. So I think that's going to be valuable for the audience. Max, thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it, Tom. Thanks to you too, Alex. Really enjoyed it.